and this is CNN Tonight, and it's the final countdown. I mean, less than 24 hours from now, the January 6th committee's last public hearing, at least for now, and it's in prime time, too. And there's certainly a lot of anticipation building on what new revelations could be coming. And so how does the panel plan to make its case tomorrow in this sort of series finale? We're on number 8, mind you. He's got another clue. Committee member Jamie Raskin just confirming to CNN that the committee plans on showing outtakes from a video that Donald Trump recorded the day after the riots on January 7th. Now, the whole thing is only about 3 minutes long of what we saw, but it took an hour to shoot, according to the Washington Post. And even then, it still needed to be edited. Watch for when the camera position changes.
Now Congress has certified the results. A new administration will be inaugurated on January 20th. My focus now turns to ensuring a smooth, orderly, and seamless transition of power. This moment calls for healing and reconciliation. 2020 has been a challenging time for our people. A menacing pandemic has upended the lives of our citizens.
So how was the other 57 minutes spent? What's in those outtakes? And why was it so hard for him to condemn the violence? Now, those outtakes were told to be a part of the committee's case that Donald Trump abandoned his duties as president, electing his own to stop his own supporters from attacking the U.S. Capitol. From what as a former White House communications director in that administration, who very publicly pleaded with the ex-president during the insurrection to call off the mob. Condemn this now, she begged on Twitter. You're the only one they will listen to for our country. We actually have a trio of Trump world and committee insiders this evening to help us walk through exactly what to expect, including someone who led initial questioning of 2 key witnesses we're going to be hearing from tomorrow. Now, remember, this is a congressional investigation, of course, and it could go on for many more months. Committee members are promising their probe is not winding down, only ramping up with so much new information coming in. It seems almost daily. But remember when it ends, whenever that is, it ends with a report, not a verdict. We'll have a conclusion, not criminal charges with some sort of answer of who did what, when, why, what you should do about it in a court of law. Because that power allows you to do the Justice Department. And there's news on that front apparently tonight as well. And there's still a huge question mark hovering over the DOJ's ongoing investigation. Namely, will Attorney General Merrick Garland ever charge Donald Trump with a crime? Does he have the evidence to do so, to indict, let alone convict? And he was pressed about it today. Listen to his answer.
No person is above the law in this country. Nothing stops us. No person is above the law in this country. I can't say it any more clearly than that.
He'll be asked again many more times, rest assured. Anyone criminally responsible for an attempt to undo a democratic election needs to be held accountable, Garland says. We don't actually know, though, how high up indictments will go and just how far above the law some might try to be. We'll talk about more of that and more throughout the entire hour of the show, but let's start with what is right in front of us. This primetime hearing that starts tomorrow. I want to get to the former Trump White House communications director. Alyssa Farah Griffin resigned from her post weeks before January 6th, and she knows the 2 former Trump aides will be testifying tomorrow. Alyssa, I'm glad to see you here today. A lot is being made of a primetime hearing, right? That's a big deal in and of itself. But about these 2 witnesses, tell me what you think of their ability to testify credibly tomorrow.
So I think it was extremely smart of the committee to pair these 2 witnesses together. So I know Matt Pottinger and Sarah Matthews personally. Sarah Matthews is a close friend. Now, Matt Pottinger was the senior-most National Security Council aide on site in the West Wing on the day of January 6th. Robert O'Brien was not in the White House. Now, this is a person with an incredible career, credibility across the aisle. He served as the Wall Street Journal bureau chief in Beijing, a Marine Corps officer. He went on to be one of the most renowned national security professionals on a bipartisan basis. Then on the other side, we have my friend Sarah Matthews, who is a tried and true Republican. She was hand recruited by Kayleigh McEnany from the Trump campaign to come to the West Wing. She worked for Republican leaders on Capitol Hill.
Can't
with
claim
her-
that's a never Trump.
Exactly. You can't claim it's a never Trumper or a rhino. So they bring in credibility from kind of two different arenas. And both were there and are going to be able to tell you what happened in those critical minutes, what the former president was and wasn't willing to say and do to call off the mob, and also shed some light on what those senior advisors around him were willing to say, how far they were willing to push him.
So far, we only have the idea of through Mark Meadows. Essentially, that's as far as we seem to get with Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony. The idea of Mark Meadows not wanting to go over and talk to him, doesn't want to do anything. He kept saying, we will actually get from people essentially the whys, the idea of the National Guard, potentially, why it wasn't deployed sooner. The idea of them being Republicans, and not just Republicans, but one recruited by Kelly McEnany, one's the press secretary of the White House as well. I mean, there have been many attacks, nonetheless, on the idea of this being a partisan job, the entire committee. You have built your own criticism about being outspoken about your beliefs, what happened that day. Are either of these two witnesses vulnerable to those sort of attacks as well? Are they seeing it already?
Well, they're certainly going to receive them. I would guess Sarah Matthews will get them worse because, as we've seen from Trump world, women who speak out tend to get the worst criticism, the worst smear campaigns, and frankly, threats. I hate to say it because she's my friend and I'm thinking of her and I'm proud of her for coming forward, but it comes with the territory. I mean, Cassidy Hutchinson has to have security for doing her role for her country and speaking out when her superiors like Mark Meadows wouldn't. But listen, they're doing right by the country. These are very credible people with integrity who aren't there for any partisan reason, only to assist the committee in this investigation.
Why are we just now hearing from you? Because Cassidy seemed to be kind of a surprise witness in many respects, and people were caught off guard, a little bit flat-footed that she'd be testifying. Were these two witnesses, as far as you know, at least your friend Sarah, were they in the works all along for this sort of final primetime event?
So Sarah's been in touch with the committee for many months. I connected her to Liz Cheney probably more than 6 months ago, and she resigned on January 6th, as did Pottinger. So she's been working with the committee since kind of the outset. I don't know when the decision was made to put her in this final hearing. My understanding is Pottinger had sat down with the committee, but I think decided to be somebody who might be used in this capacity after hearing the Cassidy Hutchinson testimony and wanting to kind of speak out more forcefully. I should note also, I've mentioned this before, but Matt Pottinger was very close with Mike Pence. He traveled with him anytime he went to Asia. That was kind of his portfolio within the NSC. And both he and Sarah Matthews have stated to the committee that it was when the Pence tweet went out that they really were like, this is enough. I cannot stand by this.
Now, you spoke to Sarah Matthews earlier this morning, as recently as that. What is she feeling about testifying? Is she nervous? Is she confident? Is she believing that there's a lot she can contribute and be additive?
Yeah, I think she's going in clear-eyed because she already got the criticism that came when she spoke out after January 6th and resigned. So I think she knows what she's walking into and she feels like it's her duty. I wish that more people did. Like, it shouldn't be a deputy press secretary who has to be the one to go testify before the committee. It should be the White House chief of staff or the White House counsel. But she's ready for it, but I'm sure the natural nerves are there because smear campaigns will begin immediately if they haven't already. But there are many of us who are there to defend her integrity and Matt Pottinger's, which is unquestionable.
What do you think is on these outtakes we're going to hear from tomorrow? I mean, these are, outtakes, 57 minutes worth from Donald Trump. What are we going to see, do you think?
I think you are going to see a lot of staff trying to coach him to say things more forcefully and more directly and to use certain language and him trying not to. I can imagine that he was not wanting to condemn violence. He was not wanting to talk about a transition of power. But by the way, I should note, while this is interesting and this is going to be revealing footage, we still haven't seen the footage of the January 6th video shot in the Rose Garden. There are other outtakes from that where he said, you're wonderful, you're beautiful people. There's apparently other versions of that I think might be even more revelatory in terms of how he was feeling on that actual day, and I don't believe the committee's gotten those in their possession yet.
I wonder why they wouldn't have that. They would have the January 7th instead. Do you have any insight as to why they would have one versus the other? I mean, first of all, we don't know what happened in Helsinki still. So the idea of us knowing what's happening on those dates, I get it. We remember that sort of video he made afterwards, but it seemed like he was almost, forced to do so, and I wonder what the outtakes of that might have looked like. But I wonder, just I'm back on Sarah Matthews and her testimony in particular, how do you feel and how do you think she's feeling about the fact that it's her and not, say, a Mark Meadows testifying? It's not others who were there. I mean, Kelly McEnany, we've seen videos of her during the actual course of this entire hearing. What does she make of the fact that it's her in this hot seat, so to speak?
I can't speak for her, but I imagine there's a level of frustration at the cowardice of more senior individuals for not speaking out. Also doing this means spending tens of thousands of dollars on lawyers, you know, spending time away from your job, dealing with the potential threats, the potential harassment. I mean, she's being brave by stepping forward, and it just kind of shows who, you know, the lack of leadership that was there in the final days, that it's her and it's 26-year-old Cassidy Hutchinson that are speaking out.
We're going to see more about exactly what happened. Alyssa, please stand by. Much more with our conversation on all of this in just a moment.